So today, we're going to talk about something that's incredibly hard to see. We're diving into a kind of abuse that doesn't leave bruises or broken bones. It leaves invisible wounds, and for the people who go through it, it's confusing, it's isolating, and it's just devastating. We are talking about narcissistic abuse.
And that's the big question, right? When the damage is all psychological, when the manipulation is so sneaky it makes you literally question your own sanity, how do you even begin to tell that story? How do you make that real for anyone else, or even just for yourself?
Well, it turns out the answer might just be hiding in plain sight. In the world of filmmaking, we're going to borrow the tools of the trade, things like lighting, editing, and directing, to create a new way of seeing. These ideas are going to act like our guide, helping us shine a light on the hidden patterns of narcissistic abuse, and hopefully make this invisible story visible for all of us.
All right, first things first, we need to get on the same page about what we're actually looking at. Narcissistic abuse is a type of psychological and emotional harm. The best way to think about it is like the script or the subtext of a movie. You can't see it on the screen, but you know it's there, shaping every single scene, every character's move, everything.
Here's a solid clinical definition to ground us. And what's really key here is that this isn't about one bad fight or someone having an off day. No, it's a pattern, a relentless pattern of non-physical tactics, things like verbal attacks, isolating you, ridicule, and it's all designed with one goal: to control and break down your sense of who you are.
And this is what it feels like on the inside. This is the real-world impact. The psychologist Dr. Ramani Devasula talks about these as the invisible scars, that constant feeling of not being good enough, always second-guessing yourself, the brain fog, the sense that you are actually losing your mind. That is the internal reality of the story. And you can see why it's so incredibly hard to explain.
Okay, so if that's what the experience is like, how do we begin to understand the person who's causing all this pain? To really get a handle on the complex and frankly super contradictory personality of a narcissist, we're going to borrow another classic filmmaking technique: three-point lighting.
Now, in photography or film, this is the standard setup to light a subject. You use these three lights to give a person shape, dimension, and depth. And we can use that exact same idea to light up the different hidden layers of the narcissistic personality. Let's break down how it works.
First up, you have the key light. This is the main light, the brightest one. It's what everyone sees first. This is the charming, confident, maybe super successful persona. Psychoanalysts call this the false self. It's basically a mask, a defensive front that's built to get admiration and project this image of being better than everyone else.
But then you bring in the fill light. The whole point of a fill light is to soften the shadows created by that bright key light. And in our metaphor, this reveals everything that the grandiosity is trying to hide. We're talking about a deep, violent envy, a desperate, bottomless need for praise, and a real lack of a stable self-identity. This insecurity is what's fueling the whole show.
And finally, you've got the backlight. Now this one's interesting. It hits the subject from behind, and its job is to separate them from the background, to give them a defined edge. This represents what one psychoanalyst, Otto Kernberg, called a pathological self-structure. It's this fundamental emptiness inside, an inability to really love or accept themselves or anyone else for that matter, and that's what makes healthy, two-way relationships totally impossible.
All right, let's head from the set into the editing room. If the personality is the subject we're lighting, then the relationship itself is the movie. And an abuser edits this movie using manipulative tactics that work just like deceptive B-roll. That extra footage that's cut into a film to control the narrative and, in this case, completely warp the victim's reality.
See, a good editor uses B-roll sequentially to tell a story that makes sense. Event A leads to B, which leads to C. Simple. But the B-roll of abuse is the complete opposite. It's this chaotic mashup of extreme affection, that's the love bombing part, and then, out of nowhere, brutal cruelty and devaluation. There's no logic. And that jarring sequence doesn't lead to understanding. It leads to something called cognitive dissonance, that awful, confusing feeling you get when you're holding two completely contradictory ideas at the same time.
And it gets even more targeted than that. Pro editors sometimes use a technique called vertical editing. That's when you layer a very specific image right on top of a powerful word or sound to create a huge emotional punch. Abusers do this instinctively. They'll align a cruel comment or action to hit you right in your deepest, most specific insecurity. It's an incredibly precise and damaging tactic.
And here it is. This is the perfect example of that vertical edit in action. This phrase, which we all know as gaslighting, is used at the exact moment a person is already feeling lost and confused. It's meant to do one thing: make them doubt their own reality, their memories, their sanity. It's an attack on their ability to trust themselves.
And the end result of all this manipulative editing? It's not just feeling bad. It's severe psychological damage. The constant confusion, the gaslighting, the emotional whiplash, it all adds up. And very often, it leads to a diagnosis of complex PTSD, or CPTSD, which comes from being in a prolonged, traumatic situation that you can't easily escape. So, if the abuse created this terribly distorted film, how on earth do you start to heal? Well, healing is basically a re-edit. A good trauma-informed therapist becomes a master editor. They help the survivor take all of that confusing, contradictory footage from their life and, piece by piece, assemble it into a new story, one that finally makes sense.
Of course, this kind of re-editing takes a special set of skills. You can't just be any editor. You need empathy, to meet people where they are without judgment. You need to see the whole system, not just the one problem in front of you. You have to build a really safe and trusting relationship, the therapeutic alliance. And you have to be able to stay calm and regulated yourself while you're navigating this really tough material. The therapist's office basically becomes a safe editing suite.
And these are some of the editing tools that therapists use. You've got things like EMDR, which helps the brain reprocess traumatic memories, or somatic therapy, which works with how trauma gets stuck in the body. All of these different approaches are designed to help a person rebuild their story and their relationship with themselves.
Now, here is something that is absolutely critical, and it's something a lot of people miss. The hardest footage to work with in this re-edit, it's not actually the bad stuff. It's the good memories. The positive moments are what create all that cognitive dissonance we talked about. They're the source of the confusion. So a huge part of the healing process is figuring out how to place those good memories into the story in a way that makes sense.
And this all leads us to the final act. Because the point of healing isn't just to make sense of the old messed up film. It's to start making a brand new one. It's all about taking back creative control. This right here, this is the power shift. Recovery is all about reclaiming your own narrative. You go from being a supporting character in someone else's chaotic movie to becoming the writer, the director, and the star of your own life. You are the one who gets to call action. You decide what happens in the next scene.
The author who created this entire filmmaking metaphor, Sadaf Shalchian, used this really powerful image in her original work. It perfectly captures this idea of transformation, the ability to take the ashes of a deeply painful experience and create something new, something beautiful from it. So we're going to end with this direct quote from her project. It's not just a nice thought, it's a call to action. It nails the three things that get stolen in narcissistic abuse: your sense of worth, your identity, and your grasp on reality. And it's a powerful reminder that all of those things can be reclaimed. The final cut is yours to make.